What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Valley coming at you with a very brief intro. Just wanted to clarify a couple things before we get into this ultra-long podcast that Grant and I did. You're welcome in advance for almost 2 hours of just nonsensical talk as usual. Wanted to reiterate, we recorded this before the games on Tuesday, so we don't talk about the 6 teams that we're playing. We don't get into the Kristaps Porzingis injury. He will now miss several games with that calf injury. Bojan Bogdanovic is done for the season for the Knicks. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, say hello to Cosmos since I have him right now. So we don't get into that. And the other thing I wanted to clarify is I was responding to a message that was sent to us in Discord that I was tagged in since my computer went off. I normally have it on Do Not Disturb. I did not this time. I misread it, and I might have ascribed a quote to David Griffin that he did not say. He did preach about urgency. I disagreed when he said that the Pelicans don't necessarily need a floor general point guard type. So when you have my comments at that part, because I do get pretty incoherent and not angry, but you know how I get if you've watched this podcast before. So I wanted to clarify that I'm talking about one, the Pelicans should not sit still, but I did focus a lot on their need for like another floor general playmaker type. With that though, let's get to lots and lots of NBA playoffs talk and fallout with the certified fantabulous, dripping with fantabulousness, Mr. Grant Hughes. What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulous, dripping with fantabulousness, thermonuclear AF co-host of the #1 NBA basketball podcast in the business. People are saying that we have changed the way that content is being disseminated and educating the masses when it comes to basketball podcasts. They're saying this. Everyone's mentioning it's Mind the Game and it's HardwoodKnocks. We're just right there. So we look forward to battling them in the charts for days to come, maybe months or weeks or years or decades to come. I don't know how long LeBron's podcasting career is going to be. We're here to talk. We're just bouncing around the entire playoffs, takeaways, things we've learned. We're going to focus. We're recording this before the games on Tuesday, so you have Knicks, Sixers, Cavs, Magic. I don't know what the fuck that series is, by the way, so I'm glad we're not going to spend too much time on it. And then Pacers, Bucks. Are those the 3 games tonight, or did I get one wrong on there?
I think you got it.
So, yeah, we're not going to be focusing too much on those series, but we're going to talk about some of the series that are over. We might get into some Clippers Mavs series. 'Tis the time of year where we go through this during the regular season where it feels like everything's kind of outdated very quickly, but the playoffs, you read so much into every single possession that everything's going to feel outdated as soon as we release it. But first and foremost, Mr. Hughes, how the heck are you doing?
I don't know if this is the best thing to say on a podcast about the NBA, but I'm really glad that 3 teams are eliminated. And it has nothing to do with the teams themselves. Like, sorry, Lakers fans, Suns fans, who else is out? Pelicans fans. It's too much to watch every game in the first round for like multiple weeks on end. I try to do it every year. I don't succeed typically, but like my percentage is real high as far as like how many minutes of first round action have there been relative to how many I've watched. And just getting teams, I'm not rooting for sweeps necessarily, but like if those teams are eliminated and I can stop thinking about them game to game and I get back like a couple hours every night or so, happy to have it, because it's a bit of a stretch. I don't know. Like in my household, it's always like, oh man, the first round's starting. Like everybody knows that it's like, well, Grant's out of commission for several hours, like just because you always got to watch the games, but you figure, well, half the league's out now. It's not that big of an ask. The most you get are 4 games in a night, which I just can't do. I don't know about you, but like I'm like 2+ generally speaking, where like that's kind of my threshold in terms of time. So glad to have 3 teams out. Sorry, not sorry.
So one, I'm with you in the sense that my even my mother-in-law, who's just not an NBA fan, will just be like, she needed me to move something, and my wife told me she was afraid to ask because she knows that this is the time of year where just like I don't have time, and so it's like I feel bad that that's how people feel. But it's like I have one of my best friends is getting married on May, I think like May, whatever a week from this upcoming Saturday is, and I'm like, well, that's kind of inconsiderate of him to just schedule it during in the middle of the playoffs.
How am I supposed to formulate Aaron Nesmith takes at a wedding?
Right. I'll do when it's the weekend and they have those 4 games set up. Like, yeah, I'll do them. And I'll try to watch. On Monday night, I watched most of every single game, but it's like when you have overlapping start times, that makes it annoying. So during the week, it's harder. I will say, I do share your sentiment when the series aren't good. I didn't need to see any more of the Phoenix Suns. Lakers Nuggets, this is not hang the banner. The Lakers were a real threat to the Nuggets, but like that was a pretty competitive 5-game series when you look at the amount of time the Lakers led. Jamal Murray had to hit 2-game winners to do it. But like Pelicans Thunder, it was just without Zion, it was over. And I don't even know how close it would have been with Zion. But so I'm with you where it's like I was ready for Thunder Pelicans, and just like I'm kind of ready for Bucks Pacers to end at this point. Like I just don't Dame and Giannis aren't playing. I was definitely ready. The Suns just I can't watch them without feeling miserable, and I'm not even a Suns fan.
Yeah, no, the ones that I mean, it's just part of it is like if they're the NBA TV series and I've got to switch to a separate app to watch them, like that's gonna hurt you. But also that like the Pelicans Thunder is a perfect example. I mean, I don't know. We can even kind of start there because I don't know about you, but I have fewer thoughts on them that series than either of the two others that were completed. But like, just zoom all the way back out to when we're previewing this series, and it's 1 versus 8. And 8 doesn't have its best player, and not just best player, but like the one that could propose like actual problems to the first seed, right? Zion just was the guy that, oh my God, if they're going to upset the Thunder, improbable as that is, it's because he just like puts Chet Holmgren into the basket stanchion, 14 times a game, and just is the guy that before the hamstring strain looked incredible. And to not have him there, and really Jimmy Butler versus Boston is kind of a similar thing. We're not going to talk too much about that series, but you know what I mean? Like the ones that feel like they're kind of over before they started really feel like more of a slog when you're like, this series is 2 games in, it's gone exactly how you expected. Games 3 and 4 feel like formalities. Like I want to turn my attention away, but you can't quite, because who knows what's going to happen. But those ones are the ones that are
Gilgeous-Alexander could suffer an ankle injury.
Anything, yeah. I mean, look at the Boston again. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but like Porzingis strains a calf, and it's like, oh shit! Like we got to at least see what Boston looks like now without him for purposes of thinking about the next round, right? Like that changes it. But yeah, I don't know.
I was going to say, let's do it like this way then. So if we want to start on the Thunder Pelicans track, do you want to give me which one of those teams do you have stronger thoughts on at the moment?
I mean, I don't
like
feel
what did we learn? Can I phrase it this way?
No.
What did we learn about the Thunder in this series to you?
Not a ton, I don't think, because of the competition and the injury to Zion. I guess like what I would say is we learned that at least one bruising big guy who did dominate the glass in Valanciunas did not sink the Thunder. And if you were looking for weak points all along, everybody talked about like that's one of them. They're not a good rebounding team, OKC. Maybe someone like Jonas Valanciunas is going to really capitalize on that. He did have some good games, good moments. Didn't really matter. And I don't know whether I attribute that to like, oh, the Thunder have hacks for this, or they've figured it out, or it's just the Pelicans had too many deficiencies in other areas for that to be like the swing factor. So I think we did learn that like one potential concern for Oklahoma City, at least in the first round, was not significant enough to like really change a single game, let alone the series. And I guess the other thing I'd say is like, the idea that they're young, it's house money, they may not be ready for this. Again, the Pelicans aren't a team that's going to really test that, but none of that the Thunder seemed very much up for it, very much like we belong, like that, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you want to talk about like individual players on the Thunder, but macro, those are kind of the two things I guess we learned about OKC.
Right. And it's not really lessons for us to take a small victory of that, because you and I were never on they're just not, it was a question, like how would Mark Daigneault kind of tighten up his rotation? Like this is young, it's his first playoff series. And it's like, we kind of saw what he's going to do. We had questions about Josh Giddey, who ended up having an okay series for the most part. And I don't know that New Orleans was built to stress test like them, they just weren't built to stress test them without Zion. It just, it wasn't gonna meaningfully anyway. I do think like among the, like if you're looking for actually something to take away from this, aside from the Thunder belong, which is just they were the number 1 seed, they belong. Like that just doesn't happen on accident. Like one of the bigger things for me was, and we're a podcast that's been on this, but like Jalen Williams is just that dude. Yeah. And I put this on Twitter. It's like, how many all NBA teams is he gonna make for his career? It's like, and it's all NBA. And so you're sitting here with Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and Shai Gilgeous, like you just have, as soon as next year, they might just have 3 All-NBA players on their roster. Chet and J-Dub both had a case this year, but it feels kind of fringe to make one of those 3 teams.
Yeah.
That's like, there are people are still talking about, can the Thunder keep this together? Are they going to consolidate? Like 2 of these guys are still on their rookie deals. I'm in an age where everyone's kind of focusing on the moment, like, oh, are they going to be ready for it? I'm starting to look at this like they might just be one of the more sustainable situations in the league because of how good they are so early. And it's just even things that, let's say one I might have missed on, where it was, well, did they need kind of a different big man type look? And I can't remember who phrased it this way, but it was like when you started getting into those options, and Bismack Biyombo is on the payroll, it's you need them to be better than big Jalen Williams. And big Jalen Williams is like good. Like, and he's got some stock, like some stockiness to him as well. What their weaknesses are, or if people thought that their style was going to get kind of gummed up during the playoffs, I think even I'll throw myself in here. Even I might have just underestimated the degree to which like the Thunder are built to kind of dictate the style. And that was, I mean, look at what they did in game 4. Shai didn't look right after he turned his ankle, which something to monitor for sure. But it's just like the Thunder are still it wasn't necessarily an easy victory, but like you had Herb Jones, like the defensive job that Herb Jones was doing on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander when he was guarding him was pretty good. Even Najee Marshall was clearly overmatched. And it doesn't fucking matter. And it's, again, I know it's the Pelicans, but they're the more interesting team to come out of this because they have more wholesale questions. But I think it's an important lesson that we kind of learned. The Nuggets are there, the Timberwolves are there, but the way that the bracket is set up, like the Thunder are clearly the second biggest threat to come out of the Western Conference, and it never should have been up for debate. And I don't know that it was up for debate in the sense of look at this top 3, but this idea that they weren't going to be ready or their style wouldn't necessarily translate. It's like Lou Dort and SGA have both played in big games, and they're just their depth is not an enemy. Like we've kind of seen that like the top heaviness might be more of an enemy for a lot of these teams. I was just overwhelmingly impressed with what they did. It wasn't always the cleanest stuff, but like even when it wasn't clean, the fact that they were still winning, I thought that really mattered.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I just think they did exactly what they should have done in the circumstances they were in the first round. And I mean, like, as much as any team, it's all, you always say like, now I'm really intrigued to see what the next round matchup looks like. Much more so for the Thunder than every other team to me, because like this was just a warm up. This was a warm up series. Like I think it's not beyond the realm of possibility that we get into the second round series, whether that's the Clippers or the Mavs that they end up facing. And like a lot of the same questions we're acting like have been put to bed resurface just because the star power on the other side will be bigger no matter what. Brighter, I guess is the right word. There will be like legitimate, I think Ivica Zubac is better. If it's the Clippers, I think he's better than Valanciunas. I think he poses more problems. I don't know what I'd say about the Lively Gafford combo necessarily, but like there's going to be Luka on the other side if it's not Kawhi potentially and Paul. Like there's just the real test is coming. That's how the playoffs work. It always gets harder. I mean, with few exceptions, but I just think the Thunder, did what a top seed should do, right? Against a beaten up, flawed number 8 seed. Like that's just
like they didn't answer. And well, I guess really they didn't have to answer any wholesale questions, and the fact they took care of business was a big thing. But I guess the one thing to kind of monitor is just like Josh Giddey shooting 50% on threes in general. Most of them were just wide open, and it's if that continues, that's going to stress test every single defense they face, because it's gonna be like, well, what are we doing? Like, we can't just stash guys on him or just, sag all the way off of him. So if he's going to make those shots, I know he has time. Like those are shots that he's going to have all postseason. Yeah. And if I don't expect him to hit them at a 50% clip, but if he's going to hit them, that makes this team so much more dangerous because they break defenses and not bending them. They break them at that point.
Yeah. So if the Thunder didn't answer a ton of questions because they didn't really have the opportunity, the sheer number of questions now facing the Pelicans on the other side of this series is really like where the meat of this discussion probably needs to be. I don't really know what to say about the Zion of it all, just because much in the same way the Thunder like operated according to expectations, Zion kind of did too. It's like in that he was amazing right up until the point where he was hurt. And that is just always the priced in, duality with him so far in his career. So I don't know what you do with that. We've talked plenty about like how difficult team building is when you have a unique player like him that doesn't
Mhm.
stay on the floor, and what, like, how do you construct a roster? That's less interesting to me now than like what are we doing with Brandon Ingram? What are we doing like in terms of remaking the core of this team? So I want to start with a question for you, and then you can take it wherever you want. But if you're the Pelicans, you get to choose between, you can keep two of the following three players. I'm sure you know who I'm going to say: Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram. You can keep two of those around. You have to get rid of one to take the next step with your team. Like, it's pretty obvious who's going, right?
Yeah. Bye, Herb. No. It has to be Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. Neither of them has the on-ball skills of a
Right.
Brandon Ingram, but there's only so far that's going to get you. There can be redundancy with Zion, even though I thought when Brandon Ingram got injured towards the end of the regular season, I just thought that dynamic had never been closer or at its peak, like for that long.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but like, then if Zion's out and comes back, does that create the awkwardness? But then if Zion's just not there, like there's just Brandon Ingram is a very good, you've said this, a very good tough shot maker. And that is valuable in the postseason. But we saw like Lou Dort had him in hell
Yeah.
for all of game 4. And you could tell he was getting frustrated. And there's only, and I don't know if this is, I don't necessarily attribute it to a coaching thing, but maybe it is. He's not someone that you do other stuff for. Like, let's do something more creative to get him open. Can he fly around off the ball a little bit more? Is there more of a change of cadence to his game, like the way that Shea does? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, and that's not an insult. Like, Brandon Ingram, he's an all-star player, but it's like they need someone who is better than that. And I guess in a sense, there is a decision here because he's going to be extension eligible. But like, you start to get into the finances of it all, and they're going to be like Jonas Valanciunas is a free agent. Najee Marshall is a free agent. Those aren't necessarily, you could say those are guys they don't need, but like those are players who are valuable to their rotation. And it's, if you want to sign Jonas Valanciunas, I think right now, as they enter the offseason projected, they're like 13 million, a little bit less than that away from the tax. It's like, if you keep Najee Marshall and Jonas Valanciunas, you're a tax team.
Yep.
And this team is not, I will believe that the Pelicans pay the tax when I see it. That's always the default I'm going to take, no matter how good they are. This is not the team they're paying the tax for.
Right.
And so are you just letting Jonas Valanciunas walk? And then how are you replacing him? Like, like the big man market isn't super. I know Pelicans fans are in love with Isaiah Hartenstein. You're not getting him for the mid-level exception. The Knicks are worried that they're not going to be able to keep him with early bird rights. So and then where is the move? Like, and I also think they definitely do need a different look at center. And now I'm just stepping on the toes of things I've already said, but they need a floor general more than they need a center at this point. You can just backstop that and figure it out later, because if it's not, the Zion Ingram dynamic is officially so shaky to the point of just ineffective because of Zion's health. And then Brandon Ingram he's not able to beat him, and CJ McCollum. They're not going to be, and Jose Alvarado. Like, you're just not going to get enough of the floor general captainship out of them. And that is going to be their challenge. They have the assets to get stuff done, but what team, there will be teams that want Brandon Ingram. I'm not saying he has no trade value, but are you going to have the stomach to then attach picks to Brandon Ingram for a player that you might think is closer to the level of a Brandon Ingram? And then who is the player? You have to go out and identify that player. And that's their challenge this summer.
It to me, it's like, I know, like, it's almost a bit now where we're just, me really, I'm just picking on Ingram. And I feel like you pick on McCollum or the point guard spot a little more, so we're kind of even there. But it's almost like, I don't know if you need,
I just pick on, like, I just pick on the fact that they don't have Trae Young on the roster.
Well, so, now you're triggering me. So it's not like Brandon, like we said, you said Brandon Ingram is an all-star. Like, he's really good at certain things. I don't know if you need someone who's like in a vacuum better than Brandon Ingram. You just need someone who's better at different stuff. Like, you need, like, his specific skill set is just not enough of a value add on the team for it to make sense. Same with McCollum. So if it was like, if I don't know, just because they're top of mind, if it's like, and again, not perfect. If you had Mike Conley instead of McCollum and like Jaden McDaniels instead of Ingram, I think you would just sort of balance like, first of all, that wing defense is hellacious with Jaden and Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, but like a guy who is looking to create easy looks for other players and a guy who's more comfortable like playing off of creation, where, you know, in Conley and McDaniel specifically, like, again, like those guys aren't available. Those guys aren't changing teams. I'm just like, those two types of players make more sense, right? You have someone that's going to create shots for guys that aren't great at it. And you have in Conley, and then in McDaniel's just another sort of dependent scorer, which then that sort of makes things hinge on Zion's creation all the more. But like, that's the team you've built, so let's maximize it around him. It just, Ingram's individual shot making and shot creating ability like is valuable. That's a skill like not a lot of guys have. That's why he's been productive. That's why he's gotten big contracts. That's why he's been an all-star. But on this particular team, clearly we just saw it. Like, it's not enough, especially when you run up against an elite defensive team with guys to throw at him that can just make what he's good at harder. And so like, it just, the mix just doesn't work. This is not some grand revelation. Like, I'm not sure about the fit in New Orleans. Like, that's been what we've talked about for years. It's just like crystal clear now.
I'm not laughing at your take. I think it's right. And one of the things you touched on, I don't have a problem with CJ. I think I even try to frame it as like, you need to probably move on from one of CJ or Ingram. And no, it's just Ingram. CJ had a flawed playoff series, but like, he was in a role he shouldn't have been in. And the thing to me is like, he made strides towards upping his 3-point volume, which is what this team needed. And even you kind of saw it in game 4. There was possession late in the game, and no, it's not a high quality shot, but like, it looked like he was kind of step back in the mid ranger, but then he took the extra dribble and got behind the 3-point line. There's more of a self-awareness there, it feels like. And he averaged over 7 3-point attempts per game for the series. That's about what Brandon Ingram took over the course. He was at 2 attempts per game for the entire series. So that's 8 versus. So, but I'm laughing because we got a Discord message added from Trey Real Stroker Murphy. David Griffin apparently is downplaying the notion of needing a pure point guard, says it's all about skill and intelligence and making the right basketball play, said SGA is not a pure point guard and they get the right shots a lot. Who the fuck is the Shea Gilgeous-Alexander on your roster? And Trey said, can you please tell Griff how wrong he is about this? You know what? Because David Griffin follows this podcast, or me, one or the other. That's not even a lie, like what I do in the intro. That's not a bit. David Griffin, if you're listening, you seem like a really good human. It's over. Like, it's time. Like, you need to bust up the core, and you need to, like, you can't err on the side of, and I think Schmidt Dew has been all over this. We've talked about it in the past. And you can't err on the side of staying the same when you're never going to get to see this group healthy in the play. It's not going to happen. It's just, and maybe it does, but at what are you at that point? And so I just, like, if they go in, this is more disastrous than them taking a swing and missing. If they go into this offseason and change basically nothing, where it's like, we kind of just changed up the center around Zion, isn't that a disaster? That's a disaster, right?
Well, it's just like, it's just flawed thinking, because, you know, you could say like, well, a lot of the young guys are going to get better. Like Dyson Daniels could get better. Trey Murphy will get better. Herb Jones has gotten better. Will probably continue to get better. I mean, what you're missing with that line of thinking is that like Ingram and McCollum and Valanciunas, if he's back or whatever, they could, you know, yeah, everyone can always get better, but they're not going to change like the types of players they are. And that's really what we're talking about. Like, McCollum is, like, to your point, has improved in important ways, but he's not like an A+. I'm going to get my teammates the ball in spots where they need it to be successful. And Ingram, I think, compounds that deficiency by being someone who almost doesn't, like, plays like someone who doesn't want shots created for him. Like, he's more comfortable getting them himself, which is valuable in late game situations or when you don't have a good defender on you. But like, as an overall strategy, like, it's not effective, at least with this mix of players. So like, yeah, there could be improvement. Continuity is great. We laud teams like Denver that just keep guys together and grow.
This is different though, right?
It's different. It's a player type thing. It's not like, how much better can they get at what they do well? It's like, these particular skill sets are not complementary. That I think is the issue.
And it's like, I'm not saying they need, I've mentioned Trae Young. I'd be okay with them going after Trae Young. It's not, you need that specific type of point guard. They don't need to be that ball dominant. They could be, if he was willing to resign and Donovan Mitchell becomes available, I don't hate that as a change up from Brandon Ingram. It could be it's so tough without knowing the trademark, but like, it doesn't need to be a conventional point guard. It could be a win if LeBron James wants to like go ahead and look at that. That's fine too. So, but it couldn't even. I would even say it couldn't. Like, let's say Kevin Durant wanted to go to New Orleans. It can't even be him because it's just like you could talk about. Well, he's not really the playmaker anyway. But it's just like no, you need someone who is both going to be a playmaker and take the right kinds of shots that's going to elevate your offense. And like Kevin Durant is just married to the mid range at this point, to where that 3-point volume is never going to be there. It's like, I don't know who the player is, but the archetype to me is just, or at least the things that they need to do. I think you have enough information to say, go out and do that. And I do think if you get to be too selective though, and this is something that just as a analog, like the Knicks could run into an issue with is like, yeah, they've been storing their assets. They're in a great position. They're better right now than the Pelicans are. I mean, if Zion was healthy, but again, that's a huge fucking question mark. You can't be too choosy. I'm not saying just throw all the assets at someone, but it's like you can't, well, Darius Garland's too small or Trae Young is too small if those are guys that become available. It's okay, well, like you need to figure, you have these two, if you don't have to give up Trey Murphy or Herb Jones in trade talks, which, by the way, you might not have to depending on the player. Like you have the draft equity and you have Dyson Daniels and you have some salary matching tools. You can get there without including either of those dudes who my spiciest take is that those guys are the core more than Zion might be at this point, just because of the availability concerns. And Zion's like, honestly, he's so good. And he was tremendous this season. I'm not diminishing anything he did. And it seems like he has grown a lot, both on and off the court. But like the availability question mark is always going to be there. And so you need someone who both complements him, but also can run the show without him. And it doesn't, I don't care what position, it could be a center. I thought about them for a minute, just for a minute. This is going to make Pelicans. I thought of them as like a Karl-Anthony Towns team. Just like, we're going to go all into offense and we'll go get like an actual point guard though, like a Trey Jones or a Tyus Jones or somebody. I just thought about that for a minute. I probably still wouldn't hate it. And you know why I probably wouldn't hate it? I just want to see them get off the continuity Schadenfreude, where it's just, you know, this will all come together at some point. And to what you said, this isn't the Nuggets situation. It's not the Nuggets had proof of concept before all the injuries kind of hit them. And the Pelicans have yet to have proof of concept when it matters. Like the Nuggets had proof of concept in the playoffs. The Pelicans don't have that. So I don't know the name. I just threw some out. I don't know if any of those pique your attention or if you even have a guy where it's, you know, if Devin Booker did shake loose, that is, we'll get into the Suns in a second. That is just, yes, if he shakes loose, but like the idea that the Suns should trade Devin Booker is kind of, as a Knicks guy, I'd be like, yeah, they should definitely move him. But no, they should. So, but is there like even a name that like kind of?
No, I mean, that's the thing. Like it's so easy to sit here and say like, well, this player mix doesn't work. And then when it comes, maybe this is part of the reason why like continuity is like a buzzword for them or Griff's happy with it is it's just like, there's not an easy fix. Really the easy fix must seem like, well, Zion will stay healthy eventually, and then we'll judge everything. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess, but you're going to wake up and it'll be 2027 and the same shit has been happening for, 5 years now.
But couldn't it even be something along the lines of, and I think this comes into the play of them being too risk averse or married to this idea of what's already in place of, let's say it's DeJounte Murray, who I don't think is the cleanest fit. He's not the best shooter, but he gives you an upgrade as a point guard playmaker. And then can you flesh out some of the other pieces around them, make sure the 3-point volume's up there. Maybe you get some more floor spacing out of the 5. It doesn't have to be the one consolidation trade. It could be, I mean, like if you turn Brandon Ingram, and I don't know what the framework of DeJounte Murray on Onyeka Okongwu for Brandon Ingram. And like, there's other stuff and then flesh out your roster from there. Or if it's DeJounte Murray, or you're getting Bogdanovich as part of that, it doesn't, like we're saying, I recognize what you're saying, where it's easy for us to say they need this, and then we can't come up with a specific name. But do you know what? The archetype is so that they need is kind of so generalized that it doesn't need to be a specific name. Just change it up. Jesus Christ. Oh man, I'm getting heated. We might need to move on.
Yeah. Okay. We've touched on the Suns players a couple times, so let's go to that series. I want to start with another question. We'll get to Phoenix because that's the post.
We have to
do. We already did, and we will continue to get to Phoenix. Dan, is the Rudy Gobert trade already a success? Would you can you is this enough? Is not just because they won a series. It's like because they won a series in resounding fashion, and the theory of the team with the two bigs and being defensively dominant and figuring it out offensively. We'll have to talk about Edwards, but like, is this sufficient to justify the trade? Getting the Timberwolves to this level where they dominate a first round series and look really strong going forward. Like, is the trade a success now today?
Yeah. And look, so one of the things, and even though this is us and Mind the Game are kind of battling out for the best NBA podcast in the business right now, that I try to be humble. And we both try to eat. We did an entire episode about things that we got wrong this past year.
Right.
We were both, I wouldn't say smitten, but really liked the Rudy Gobert trade in the moment. So we had the comments on one of the Timberwolves clips we posted about, yeah, you guys were just so wrong. And no, we had to eat crow for being wrong last year because we thought the trade was good. Mm-hmm. And we both were high on the Timberwolves coming into this year. That being said, we did recognize that it was an overpay. I think in hindsight and how the trade market is kind of settled, it was still an overpay, but it is a success. What is the argument against it now? Because even if they won a playoff series and like that shit matters to that specific market, that fan base. We're talking about 2 decades of just wandering through the desert, basically. And now you've won a playoff series against a team, by the way, that was favored over you. And so it's a monster success. And now, yes, you want to get out of the second round. There are payroll implications. There's the battle for the soul of the organization with these billionaires or fake billionaires, whatever you consider Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lord's like ownership group. It's just like, what would be like, if they lose to the Nuggets, and we'll have like a different type of preview up at some point about that. I'm going to turn it back to you, and maybe you should answer your own question, but to take it a level further, if they lose to the Nuggets in the second round, is it still okay if that's the pinnacle of the Rudy Gobert era, because now they're going to bust up the core by next year's trade deadline because of the fine? Like, was it still a success?
That's why I asked the question. It's like, if
it's
it goes
to me, because I think that it put them on the map and gave them, I mean, like, the thing that I will continue to eat crow for is I destroyed the D'Angelo Russell trade when they flipped him for Mike Conley and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And it turns out that Nickeil Alexander-Walker might be the most valuable player in that trade.
Yeah, right. No, I think it's, so to me, the Timberwolves got themselves to a level. It took a year, but even last year, when it seemed like, oh my God, this trade's a catastrophe, it was like, well, you still had the excuse of they never really were healthy together long enough, and they still gave the Nuggets a pretty good run. The Nuggets said so. We've mentioned that several times. So it's like, I think it has to be viewed as a success almost no matter what happens going forward. But I think you got to acknowledge that if it goes to shit in the second round, suddenly that will seem like a harder question to answer. I guess and so like, if you're saying it is a success, it was a success, the Gobert trade, you got to be willing to say that still if they just fall apart. Which will be a weird, so it's not like, it's not a success. It's not written in ink yet, I don't think. I think it should be, though, just because all you can do is get a team to a certain level, and then like at some point luck factors in and things out beyond your, like, whatever. But you had the key point of like, it's different for a team like Minnesota. It would be different it's different for a team like the Kings, for example. It'd be different for like the Pistons, I guess, if they become good for the first time in 20 years. Like that kind of a fallow period like that for that long just has to make the bar for success a little lower, because like they're relevant, they're really good, they have a puncher's chance against almost anybody. Like that's better than this team has been for like, many people listening to this for like their entire experience of being NBA fans. Like this is the best the Wolves have ever been. So I think you have to, even if it goes sideways next round, you have to view it as a success.
Right. And I don't think I would have a problem, because just if they bow out in the second round against the reigning NBA champions, who might be built as a dynasty, even if they bow out, it's not over. Like this, you look at the top 7 guys on their roster right now. And I'm going to say just top 8, even though he's not top 8. Leonard Miller is going to be, I'm in love with Leonard. You know how I feel about Leonard Miller. But like, it's not just over. Like, if they decide that it needs to be over, then you know what? That's different. But that's organizational incoherence and inconsistency if they decide to break up a core that just won 56 games, had the best defense in the league by a mile, and is still built to, when you look at their key players, and that was going to be my other, like, one of the things we learned about them, and I want to throw to you about Anthony Edwards, but like, you're built to get better. Like, Naw's not super old. Jaden McDaniels has already gotten better offensively in the playoffs, and I annihilated him for like his offensive season leading into it. Anthony Edwards isn't done improving. Like, you just watched him, like, it wasn't just the offense. It was him defending his ass off when he had, it's not as consistent as a Jaden McDaniels, but when you also need to be basically the James Harden for your offense at this, like when Cat's not on the floor, that's okay. And so I was going to, unless you have anything to add on the success, I'm with you. It's just a success right now. And if we need to question it, it's probably like, well, let's fast forward like another 2 years to see what they've done from here. And by the way, there's a chance they beat the Nuggets. Denver, this is repeat. Denver came, I think, who said it? Was it Bruce Brown or MPJ or, but Denver basically said that Minnesota was the toughest team they faced in the playoffs last year. And so they could win that series. But I wanted to ask you, Anthony Edwards is now being talked about as the potential face of the league, that he's going to be, there's no limit on his ceiling, yada, yada, yada. But I've seen some now pushback from it and not, oh, what about Victor Wembanyama pushback? That's the natural, whatever. Do you think that his impact, his ceiling, his potential, his play, who he is as just a basketball player is being hyperbolized at all, sort of captured in the moment type of stuff?
So that's funny. This was my next note, is we have to talk about this exact issue with the Timberwolves. I think it depends on, like, I mean, part of the problem with the, like, he's the face of the league discussion is like, what is that? What do you mean by that? It's like, I guess if you say so, because then that means that like he's marketable and good and cool and is just like the guy, he has some intangible quality, which, like, if that's your argument, then like, yeah, like he's charismatic. Like I was trying to think watching game 4, like, who's the last guard? Because he's like a guard. He's not a wing. He's not 6'7". He's not like in the LeBron, Durant, Kawhi, Paul George, like that. That type of player has kind of been the dominant like alpha for a while, with some exceptions. Who's the last guard that like could dominate games defensively? Not just like, oh, he's shutting someone down, but like he's coming out of nowhere for crazy like help blocks and he's getting steals and then he's scoring in like this pretty ISO heavy. Like, that's a tough. Like, if Brandon Ingram is a tough shot maker, Anthony Edwards is also in that category. Like, he takes some, what you would say are bad shots and makes them. And like, I think the Jordan comparisons are absurd, but like, that's the guy you point to. Like, the guy roughly that size that is doing it on both ends and seems to have like this, like, one, the athleticism to just overpower the best athletes in the world. And two, like this gear of competitiveness that is like kind of overwhelming for some opponents, I think. So like, I get that. Also, he's 22 and we're making this coronation like way before his peak. He's not, I mean, like, athletically, he'll probably decline because you sort of can't ascend from where he's at now. But like, we're 3-4 years from like the best version of Anthony Edwards, like, God willing, there's no injuries. So that's one thing. Like, so it is premature in that sense. The other sense is, having now seen and read after sensing it, all this shit about the Suns don't really buy into what's happening, don't seem committed to the coach, laid an egg. Like, this isn't the series. In some senses it is, like, because he was the best player on the floor in a series that involved Devin Booker and Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. But in the other sense, it's like, again, let's see against a team that like wants to be there and like believes in what they're doing and is put together sensibly, which none of those things describe the Suns. So it's early, but I understand the rush to do it just because of like the type of player and personality he is. I just want to see him do this again against a better team. And if he does, then I'm couching it, but like, I don't know what you'd say if he does it in the next round.
Yeah. And I mean, just even this round, like averaging 31, 6, shooting 44% from 3, 70% of his field goals were going unassisted, to your point. I don't think it's, it's premature to just declare him the face of the league, mostly because I don't know how you gauge that. It's
That's what I
more
mean.
of when we talked about LeBron and Steph, and I guess like Durant in those terms, or Kawhi when he was at his peak. It's not premature to say that he's going to be part of that next collective.
Yeah.
Where is it going to be Wemby, Luka, Edwards, and Shea? I'm sure I'm leaving something. Like there's just a bunch of options. This is not premature. I don't think he's been, maybe if you want to get into the face of the league discussion, fine. He's not been hyperbolized as a player just because of how he's improved every single season. And I kind of just keep thinking, you mentioned this when he's 26, 27, and actually in his prime. What does he look like as a passer if this is what he's doing right now? Or what does he look like if he gets a younger type of playmaker next to him at some point that can alleviate some of the offensive burden and make things easier on him? We love Mike Conley to death, but he's 80 years old or whatever it is. So like I can't fathom how good he's going to be at that point. And so I couldn't even tell you who's the face of the league even right now, or who was the face of the league during peak LeBron, peak Steph. I think you default to LeBron, but like there was a time where it felt like it was Steph, and it's a debatable discussion because what metric are you using to actually gauge it? He is certainly going to be a part of like when you think of a certain era or certain pocket of time in the NBA, there are players that spring to mind. I think he has shown when you're talking about the next pocket of time that is coming, if it hasn't arrived already, he's absolutely in that discussion right now. Like he does feel like do you know how I kind of feel about him is we thought it was going to be Ja and Zion at some point. Ja's dealt with injuries and some off-court stuff. Zion has dealt with injuries, and it no longer feels like it's going to be those dudes. They're certainly talented enough for it to be, and maybe I guess Ja has a better chance of working his way into it. I think Zion overall is just a better all-around player. And I don't want to bounce them from the discussion entirely, but like Anthony Edwards, I don't know if you would have said, even seeing like him ratchet it up in the postseason before, which is when you're that young is a pretty big deal. I don't know if he would have been mentioned in the same breath as just like Shea and like Wemby necessarily, if you knew what Wemby was going to be in the NBA, and Luka specifically, who's this proven commodity. And I think now there are people that might be prepared to say, well, he's going to become synonymous with this era more than Luka is. And that might be where you're getting inflammatory, but it's also something that you can consider because he's been that good.
Yeah, I think that's where the face of the league stuff comes around to sort of, it's different than saying, is he going to be the best player in the NBA for the next however many years? Like he'll be in that conversation, I think pretty undeniably, but it's like, it really is, it is like there are no stats for it. It's just like, he's giving us what we want to see from a marquee star in terms of like the competitive intensity, the like leveling up in the bigger games, just like the like, I don't know what the style that he plays with, just like the smiling, like that's like a new, guys don't do that. Like like, I guess it's charisma. I don't know what it is, but like
it's like a charismatic abandon.
Yeah. Like he's out there just like, this is fun. Like I am loving like this super competitive, environment. Like I'm built for, like, I'm sure he said I'm built for this like 100 times. Like I'm sure it's on record. And like a lot of guys say that, but like he really does operate as if this is exactly what he's supposed to be doing. So I think like in ways, you were mentioning some other names. It's like if Jason Tatum wins an NBA championship this year, I think you'll still have everyone saying like, yeah, but Edwards is the guy. Like just if you're comparing those two, for example, or like if Devin Booker had won that title with the Suns a couple years ago, I think and you're comparing him now. It's like, but Edwards just has like something. And so like, this isn't that podcast. We're not going to just, we're not going to rhapsodize about like his intangibles, but like, if we're talking about face of the league, that's priced in because it's different than like, is he the MVP? That's a separate type of question.
That's a good segue into the Suns though, because I think this is where you get into some of the intangible stuff. And for me, and part of it, so there's so much wrong with the Suns that we are going to touch upon. But so you're talking about Edwards specifically, and even you kind of get this vibe from the Thunder, it feels like they genuinely like each other, that everyone really likes, just to focus on Shea.
Mm-hmm.
Like just seems super likable, and it seems like that team is very together. And there's something about the Suns do not feel that way. And I would argue that pretty much no Kevin Durant team has ever felt that way.
Yep.
My whole thing is, and I'm going to use a weird analogy here, is it doesn't, when you think about like normal jobs, but just other jobs, coworkers, you don't expect them to be best friends. But it's almost kind of like, think about bands like Blink-182. Here we go. Just
Yeah.
rep it.
This has all been an elaborate plan for you to circle back to this. This has been a long time coming.
So just like part of the appeal for me, the mystique of Blink-182 has always been that they weren't just these people who got together to make money off of music. It was they were best friends, specifically Mark and Tom. And so when that fractured and they came back the first time, it still didn't feel right because you could tell the friendship was fractured. Now they come back again. You can call it a cash grab, whatever you want. It certainly was. I paid the ticket prices, so I know it was a cash grab. But like the vibe is different on the stage and you appreciate the experience more. And I feel like in sports, it's a lot of the same way because you don't view it as a regular job and couldn't even like, let's use us as an example. It's just like, wouldn't it be weird if like this community we're trying to build in Discord and we want people to feel like we're accessible, but like this is a podcast that's personable, but then you and I didn't really ever talk outside of this podcast. So like, it's kind of a different scope of a job, but like, spoiler, Grant and I don't hate each other. Like there's not, so isn't that part of the appeal when you're looking for entertainment or experience? And then you get to the Suns and there's just like never feels together. And you're also, there's this huge extreme because you're going from that previous core where it was Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Devin Booker just sort of yucking it up. And even DeAndre Ayton felt like he was a part of that for a little while. And it's easy to maintain that dynamic when the going is good. It's when there's the burden of expectations or you failed a couple times like the Suns did, or maybe when it feels like things grow stale. This Suns team grew stale and it was together for a second. Like when you factor in Beal, I know Durant was there since last season. There has to be something to this. And some of that will fall on Devin Booker. Like when it comes to leadership, like even he is going to emote more on the court, even when it comes to defense than a Bradley Beal or a Kevin Durant. And I don't know what to think of Kevin Durant. Zach Lowe called him a wayward soul ever since he left Oklahoma City, like wayward basketball soul. And that feels dead on. There's just something, there's stuff lacking on the court, but there's like a fundamental, like emotional deficit to this Suns team where it never felt like you would watch them play or even just their mannerisms never felt like they were together. And that is, you can change out the parts around them, like the minimum contract, certainly, but like that might never go away. And I don't know what to make of that, especially when you're trying to frame, and this is the moral of the segment, is where do the Suns go from here?
Yeah, I think it's so hard to like get into this kind of discussion specifically about Kevin Durant, because even though he's been covered exhaustively for his whole career, it's like what we don't know outweighs what we know by a factor of like a million, right? Like we really don't. But what we do know now and have a new data point to support is that like he doesn't seem content with any scenario. If you like, and the reasons don't seem to be the same, right? Like if Zach Lowe's talking about like he's been a wayward soul since Oklahoma City, like, I mean, who's to say like he wasn't there? Like he left that team, right? Like he was, you know, Harden was traded away, but he was the first piece to go from that core, like of his own volition. And things seemed pretty good there. That was a really good young team. That was the best Thunder team until this one. And then in Golden State, like he's not happy there. And that's a different set of circumstances, but man, were you winning? Like that, like if that's, you know, that team was about as good as a basketball team can be for a 3-year run. And then Brooklyn is basically a place he chose to go, not happy there for several reasons. And now Phoenix, I'm not saying he's come out. He certainly hasn't come out and said he's unhappy, but there was
the report that he was unhappy with his offensive role.
Sure, with his offensive role. So so there's another one. I think what we can say pretty definitively is like, while he's, I don't know where you'd put him in terms of just pure talent, like might be the purest scorer ever. That's not a ridiculous thing to say. It doesn't seem like we have any evidence that in terms of all the other stuff you need to succeed as a basketball team, like he adds value, whether that's like camaraderie, whether that's like
Does
I
he
don't know,
elevate the play of those around him?
leadership. Like
Yeah.
you certainly wouldn't say Kevin Durant is someone that you would install in a leadership position after the way things have gone over the last, really his
Like if
career.
Jim Boylan wanted to make the leadership committee.
He's not on the leadership council, whatever that is. He's not in the triumvirate of whatever. So yeah, like it sucks to have to, I don't know. I feel like we're killing him. And it's certainly not just his fault, but it's like, this is team number 4. And, for the most part of the last 3, you've chosen where you wanted to play. And like, you're not driving winning in any way other than like good individual numbers. I don't know. I think maybe there's another chapter here. Hopefully there's another chapter. I hope he plays for several more years and continues to be awesome. But like, he's gonna have one of the most complicated legacies of any really great player, and it's gonna take a lot of time, I think, before it like settles and we have like, okay, here is our take on Kevin Durant, just because like the individual talent and the just wayward soul nature is just so hard to like arrive at some sort of take on, when you have to weigh those two things. But so what do they do? Do they trade him, Dan? Like, are we trading Kevin Durant now?
So, and the reason that this matters about Kevin Durant is, and this was the first step, everything that happened, is because you had Kevin Durant or went out and got Kevin Durant, there's the price you paid for him and then everything you did after, the Ayton trade, getting Bradley Beal. And now you don't have control basically over any of your first or they have their first round pick this year, I believe, yes. But you don't have control over any of your first or seconds until 2031. And so now you're in this situation. That's why I do feel now, if he agitates throughout Devin Booker, I'm talking about, that's a different conversation. You can't move Devin Booker because of the picks. Like you can't, you have no lifeline there. You could be, and I guess if you're sending him to Brooklyn to get all your own picks back, sort of like what Brooklyn could have done with Mikal Bridges. So, but you can't move him. Like that's a discussion if he wants out, but he's under contract until Kingdom Come at this point. Now, the Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant stuff is you could still get value for Kevin Durant, but how are you making your team better after the version of Bradley Beal you kind of just saw? And it's just like, I don't know. And so I'm sitting here going, I think I've seen a lot of, and the Timeline podcast did they called it a therapy session afterwards. I thought it was good. They had mentioned this and they're not wrong, but you're going to have to exchange. You have Nurkic and you have Grayson Allen, you have this big 3, and then kind of move the parts around. How? Like your Nas Little becomes like your primary salary matching fodder there. And even if this is where it gets super complicated. So let's say they're willing, and I'm sure he's not considered untouchable. This is a super tax team, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know this by now. So they're not going to be able to take back more money in trades. They can't aggregate players to acquire a single player, in addition to a litany of other stuff. But I'm talking about just that money matching for now. Let's say you're willing to move Yusuf Nurkic. That is a player who, while I think useful in the regular season, at his $18.1 million price point, who are you getting as just the 1-for-1 swap? And you can't even sit here and say, well, we just get a worse contract. That price point, there's not going to, like, the contracts aren't bad at that price point anymore. Yeah. You need the Andrew Wiggins deal to go, and you can't get to that money. And so it's like, we know what they need. They need athleticism. They need wings. They could use a conventional point guard. And so it's like, but how do you go out there and get that with what you have, the stuff that you can offer? You might be sort of locked into this. And I know there's been a lot of talk Devin Booker didn't improve enough. Him operating as your floor general isn't necessarily ideal. I probably come around to the idea that does make sense. Like, he is still your best option there. And I don't know how is Kyle Lowry going to be willing to come and sign and play for the minimum? And that's something you could look at. I think they're stuck in the sense of, unless there's a team that Bradley Beal wants to go to because he has that no trade clause and is willing to give you're not getting picks for him. That is out the door. But it's, let's use Miami as an example. If they flame out of the playoffs and if it's just costing us salary matching to bring in Beal, maybe they view it as they're probably a team that's smart enough to get Beal to waive his no trade clause permanently as part of the trade. Like, that's the other thing we could revisit. I don't even know if we talked about it. Why did the Suns try and negotiate the no trade clause is gone as part of this deal?
It seemed like they had no leverage, and they paid everything they could, and because I'm sure Grant and Beal and Ishbia wanted Beal there, and so it's like, get it done, and so
and Ishbia is the guy that you have to look at through the lens of this team building. But anyway, is let's just say it's Miami and they're willing, like maybe we could end up flipping Beal for more than we give up for him, but like they just don't have this expendable salary fodder either. It's okay. There's Duncan like the three primary salary matching tools would be Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, and Terry Rozier. Now, I guess if you're the Suns, you're definitely interested in Duncan Robinson, but like if you're the Heat and I was dealing with back stuff, why are you giving him up? And then you don't need Tyler Hero because you have Bradley Beal and Devin Booker. And then I guess Terry Rozier is not, he's more of a point guard or floor. He's not, no, actually, he's more of a point guard in the conventional sense than a Devin Booker or Bradley Beal, but Devin Booker is still going to be your best passer on the team at that point. So, like, is there even a situation like that? I think I could be open idea just divesting Beal into multiple bodies. Well, but what team has multiple bodies to offer that he will also waive his no trade clause to go to?
That's the thing. So, like, every layer of this is tricky, but so like, let's assume that your decision as the Suns, like the way out of this is we're going to move Beal. And so, okay, so that means that Durant and Booker are going to be there and the rest of the roster pretty much is intact. So then it's like, well, we have to get guys back that help now, and trading someone like Beal usually isn't that's not usually what you get. So like, to me, I haven't thought about this. It's just like, as you're talking, it's like, well, what if you just, Philly's got cap space. They want a big splash. Like, let's trade him into cap space to the Sixers and get picks back. Like, that's what I would want if I'm Phoenix. That's not what Durant or Booker would want. And probably that's not what Philly would want, because they probably think they could do better or not take back such an onerous deal with the no trade clause still there. Probably maybe Daryl Morey could get him to drop it so he could flip him. But like, that package is a non-starter for the Suns because that just makes them worse and is not geared around building the best possible team with these two other veteran stars you have. Like, so I don't know. That's why you keep coming back to Durant, even though this would be such an abrupt about face, like giving all that shit up to get him, seeing for a season plus that it doesn't work, and then let's flip him so we can, I don't know, let's like retool around Booker and Beal. Like, Durant, you can't trade Beal. I think Beal is too hard to trade. Unless Booker asks to be traded, you don't trade him. And so it comes back to Durant. And Durant, there is going to be a market for, I think, right? Like, you're not getting the same package probably that you gave up to get him. So you're going to be in the red there. But yeah, like, and if he's unhappy and maybe and Booker's not cool with the whole vibe there, like, you could, it'd be easier to move him. But it's just like, where's he going?
I was going to say, I think that's I'm not saying that. I think you only look at breaking up this big three. Well, if there's a Bradley Beal opportunity out there, and I don't even care what you get back at this point. It's if you can just get out of that.
That's the thing. The Sun, like Booker and Durant, will care.
Because if you could just if you were able to trade him, what if the Magic just said, "Yeah, we'll take him," they're willing to create the cap space where they have like all these non-guaranteed deals. You take the extra flexibility of, well, maybe we could spend our mid-level exception at some point, because they're not going to have that either.
Yeah.
But I'm even what I'm getting about with the Durant thing is, like, if he asks for out, you visit it. But right now, your best bet at making the most of this window is still kind of dancing with the three guys you have here, just because I don't know what's the team. And even if the team is coming in for Kevin Durant, you could say that, all right, if you get picks and stuff, but like the Suns don't want that either. And so who's giving you actual players for Kevin Durant? And like, I was even trying to think, the shout out to Rome 8180 had messaged me about could they move Grayson Allen, who just signed an extension, to Orlando? Would they give them stuff? And yeah, I think Orlando would, but like, I was even like, Jonathan Isaac would make a lot of sense. Hey, you know who they can't acquire? Jonathan Isaac, because the money doesn't match up. He makes a slightly more than Grayson Allen. And it's, well, now we're trading someone who could play 25 plus minutes a game for someone but like Jonathan Isaac would be perfect here. And you could go a route of like, so the Magic have cap space. Would they give you Mo Wagner and a first round pick? Mo Wagner would make a lot of sense for this team when you're looking at their center position. But what is that? Like, what, like, now you like lose a guy who was the best 3-point shooter in the league on a team that doesn't take enough threes. So like, you can't even, they're in such a weird spot. And you can say, well, you can't move Grayson Allen once the extension, restriction lifts. I'd probably agree with you. But what is maybe we're just misidentifying an opportunity out here, but who is giving you multiple contracts for Yusuf Nurkic? And it's even just like, or the 1-for-1 with Nas Little. Like, what is the price? Because you don't have anything to attach to Nas Little.
You don't have sweeteners. That's the other thing. I mean,
and so it's like, you could do something like Nas Little for Javon Carter. And like, that might move me, because I think Javon Carter, he had a down year this year at Chicago, but like, he's not even giving you enough, point guardiness in that type of thing. And so they're in such a weird spot or bad spot.
we haven't discussed what in fact is going to happen, which is they're going to fire Frank Vogel and they're going to change
which
the
is just absolutely absurd, even if you think he did a bad job, because
well,
that's
sure.
peak. We can't change anything else other than the coach territory, is it not?
That is 100% what that is. Like
Okay.
it's just, again, this kind of ties back to Durant, where it's like, well, what are you unhappy with this time? You know, and I think some of the other players, it sounds like from the reporting we're like, you know, we not super psyched about how the offense runs or how the rotations work or how the defense runs. Like that's all coach stuff. That's just we just outlined how difficult it's going to be to change personnel. So obviously the coach will be what changes. And that's like, I don't think it's going to matter. I think you still have all the same issues you have with the roster makeup and the lack of flexibility, but it's just like that's what it'll be. Now, the other thing is like I don't know who's the coach out there that's going to fundamentally like who's going to run the offense that Kevin Durant likes. Like who's going to paper over the lack of a point guard with his genius scheming. Like it's just like the coach doesn't exist. Like it's sure you could someone will do a better job than Frank Vogel. It's totally possible. But it's like all of the core problems are still there. You know, it's still, and look, Durant's going to be a year older. Bradley Beal played like 50 something games, and that's the most he's played in several years. Like odds are he's going to miss time again. Like Devin Booker hasn't been some like model of durability. Like this on a personnel side, it probably will get worse like as these guys get older. Right. So like the coach, you have to change the coach. We get it. That's like, we've followed the league long enough to know that's what's going to happen. Deep down, you have to do that knowing you're just putting off the really hard decisions for another year.
Yeah. Cause like the names that are out there is just, I saw the timeline podcast I was listening to them said that people wanted like Mike D'Antoni in here.
Oh my God.
So just, all right. But like even Ty Lue, let's say he becomes available, which you can't, he's employed by the Clippers right now. So I just don't, I don't know that the coach that's out there that's going to come in and have this, it's a personnel, but it's not just you can call it an ideological problem, but like part of the, like, do you think that, like, did you see, when Kevin Young was at his introductory press conference, I think for BYU, and I saw some of the quotes that were coming out of that, and he was just basically lamenting how hard it was to build the Suns offense because these dudes don't want to take threes. And it's just like, if you have someone who is like leaving the situation and saying that, like, that should clue you in, like, this is not just a Frank Vogel thing.
Yeah. It seems pretty like, I don't know. I can't stop like circling back. It seems pretty clear that Kevin Durant wants to play how he wants to play. And if that happens to align with your offensive philosophy as a coach, lucky for you. And if it doesn't, like, it's just going to be a rough go because like, it's just what happens.
Right. I just don't know how you move him and get better. I guess if you're getting a point guard, but like, what is it? Like, even I thought about like a reunion with the Warriors, but at that point you're looking at, it's everything. It's Pods, it's Kuminga and Wiggins, and then picks. But does that make do you feel better about your team after that move if you're Phoenix?
I mean, no, you're objectively worse probably because you lost a superstar. But like, well, I don't know. Maybe, you can't be better, right? You're more balanced, I guess, but like your ceiling's probably lower.
And the primary playmaking stuff is still an issue in that regard.
Yeah, right. You haven't addressed that. You didn't get like the floor general back. I mean, what a fascinating, I mean, like the Warriors do show up on the very short list of like, this is semi-plausible as a Durant destination, which says a lot about like how few options there are because like, a few years ago, it'd be like unthinkable that he would go back. Like, that's just, you talk about like.
I have a message here for anyone who wants to see the reunion in Oklahoma City. I am begging the Thunder not to ruin what they have by acquiring Kevin Durant. The vibes, and then also, what are you doing to your offensive hierarchy? Does this infringe upon Shea? Let's say it doesn't, because he's like, oh, so we're just going to then infringe upon J-Dub. I know Kevin Durant right now is still a better player than J-Dub. He's going to be 36. It's just, I'm not being ageist here. Me and Kevin Durant are basically the same age. So, and he's better at his job.
How washed you are. So like you can relate.
You're right. Look at me. So, but my whole thing is, and he's better at his job than I am at mine. I fully recognize that. But like the age stuff matters here, which is why it was always a risk when they acquired Kevin Durant. And I know that everyone's sitting here saying the Bradley Beal trade was a disaster. You know what? In terms of the end result, yes, because now you're stuck. but the opportunity cost did not, like, you were never going to get a player who could theoretically be as good as Bradley Beal for what you were able to offer in the moment. And I really want to know where it all went wrong behind the scenes, that you felt like it was like, we got to get rid of CP3 and DeAndre Ayton. And this just,
Right.
I'm not saying Ayton would have been better than Nurkic, but like as a trade asset, in theory, you could still kind of, if he would have had a good year this season, like in Phoenix, he would have given you this trade chip that had just a little bit more shimmer, or a lot more shimmer, than a Yusuf Nurkic. And this, again, you already had made the Durant move. And so at that point, that's the domino that put all this other stuff into motion. And I put it all on Matt Ishbia, even more so than I do James Jones, who probably, he deserves a lot of credit for going out and getting Royce O'Neal.
Yeah.
And like with the assets that they had, I think, but I do think, to kind of put a bow on this, I think it's if the Suns are the ones, like if Kevin Durant and Devin Booker aren't saying they want out. And I don't know if you saw any of Devin Booker's exit interview comments. Like, this dude is, you can have quibble about how he played for a lot of the series, but he has like a head on his shoulders and was like, the important thing is to not panic in the moment and to not overreact. And they're kind of they put themselves in a situation where it's, well, you do have to overreact because of like your urgency of your timeline, but that's actually the right call here. So if he's not coming to you, if Durant's not coming to you agitating for out, you kind of have to take the semi-continuity route and explore everything else on the margins possible, because you're not going to be a better team, and your future's not going to be better off if you move Durant or Devin Booker. It's just, it's impossible. The only scenario is you move Devin Booker for all the picks that you gave up, your own picks. And then then you still have to rebuild.
You know who's really happy right now is the Nets, because they've got these picks and they're just sitting here like watching the fire start and just waiting with gas cans. And
the
hoping.
Most hysterical outcome to all this would be they trade Mikal Bridges to Houston for all their own picks back, and then they trade all the Phoenix's picks back to Phoenix for Devin Booker, and it's just like these teams are throwing the same picks back and forth.
Clean slate. Everybody, let's all agree to start over.
But yeah, very quickly, let's do this. Just, will they be in Phoenix next season? Yusuf Nurkic.
Yeah.
Grayson Allen.
No.
Wow.
He's not an extension, right? That felt like a contract signed to be traded, because they realized they got to get a bigger number on the books so that they can move him, right? Like
Royce O'Neal, free agent. They have his bird rights.
Yeah, they'll overpay to keep him, I bet.
Frank Vogel.
No, he's the easiest. He's gone.
James Jones.
I think he'll still be there.
I don't think this is on him. I don't think it's on Vogel either, to be clear. The only one I disagree with you is I think Allen I think he'll still be in Phoenix. Devin Booker.
Yeah, he'll be there.
Kevin Durant.
Also, yes. And I'm going to cut you off and say Beal, yes. I think they're going to change the coach and just hope that's that, and maybe trade Allen or maybe Nurkic, but I think Allen is the more like marketable piece. So that's the only reason I thought he would be the one to go. So you differ on Allen? I guess I could see why they just like don't trade that guy, because then you have no shooting at all. Like,
and it's like, who are you getting? So it's, I guess you're flipping him for a big or a wing. I'm trying to think of like what wing or big would have to fit into the salary structure once he's eligible to be traded.
What slightly overpaid backup point guard do you want to swap him for, so the Suns address the need everybody complained about all year? Should we move to Denver?
Can we do something happier and talk about the Nuggets?
Yes, let's do. I'm trying to. So I like to start these with questions. It just worked out this way because I'm asking them myself. So 4-1 wasn't a sweep. I think we both had Lakers in 5 or Denver in 5. I forget. It was either 4 or 5. So kind of went to plan. But there's the stat out there that like the Lakers led for 160 something minutes of the 240 that were played, and the Nuggets outscored them ultimately by like 11 points. So
and the game 4 win is doing a lot of work in that, but like that's still not kind of this was Michael Malone said it afterwards. Like, this wasn't your typical. No, this isn't the rah. The Lakers are right there. They're not.
But, right. No, but it wasn't like, again, it's a lot like last year where it's like, yeah, they were in all these games. They just didn't have it, that final push. So tell me how you view the Nuggets coming out of this series now. Was this Denver like playing with its food? Was it the Lakers are actually good / a tough matchup? Was it the Nuggets maybe aren't as indomitable, like inevitable as we and many others have made them out to be? So like there's kind of 3 routes to go. It's obviously some combination of them all. But like, do you skew one way or the other of those 3 options in thinking about the Nuggets going forward?
I feel like I feel I don't know. I feel slightly more uneasy, and I'll tell you why. I know Jamal Murray hit 2 game winners, and the dude is a postseason legend, but there's like the calf stuff
Mhm.
has me worried because he wasn't like this wasn't a banner series for him. He had a very good game 5. And so that's something to monitor. There's also a level, I don't know if this was because Anthony Davis made life difficult on him or if Jokic was playing with his food. And I kind of almost feel like he might have been playing with his food because like he just decided to flip that switch sort of in the latter third of game 5 and then
Mhm.
it was just over. So I just more so just about, okay, what does Jamal Murray's health look like? Even just sort of the Aaron Gordon, he hit a 3 in game 5 and I was like, I almost fell out of my seat. So like that stuff hitting there. And then there's always because the Jamal Murray injury is kind of sobering in the sense that I'm done with injuries this playoffs. I'm done with
Oh,
injuries all the time, but it feels like there's been an influx of them. But all of a sudden, you kind of realize, okay, like we're one because Jamal Murray he said he was never not going to play game 5, but Michael Malone said it was a very emotional decision. If he
mhm.
needs to miss a game, this rest off, that's why the Nuggets needed to win is to get the time off that they're going to have until the start of the series versus the Wolves. Like you're all of a sudden just like very close to, oh, Reggie Jackson or Peyton Watson or Christian Brown needs to play like 35 minutes or something. Like that just gets a little uneasy. But I think you look at this team and I think more than anything, it wasn't, I give credit to the Lakers. They did put up like an actual fight, but this was more just Denver wasn't Denver. And we saw what happened when Denver decided to be Denver or close to Denver. And I still just believe that while I would give the Wolves or the Thunder a shot in a series, I feel like this isn't like to me, the Nuggets are still, they're not just the best team in the West, they're head and shoulders better than everyone else when they're at full strength or close to it.
I think this was clearly a better test. Obviously, the others were sweeps, so like, yeah. But than the other 2 West teams that have advanced got from their competition, and I couldn't get past the idea because I came into this series thinking like, yeah, I know what the record is. I know it's 8 straight or whatever at the time the series started that the Nuggets have beaten the Lakers, but I continue to think Anthony Davis is about as good as you can do in terms of an individual matchup for Jokic. And Davis was fucking great for like a lot of this series. And it just and that was my thing coming in is like he could be incredible and we'll leave it saying like it still doesn't matter. And so I
Yep.
think that really did kind of play out. But I don't know. I do leave this series feeling like less certain of Denver's inevitability than I did going in. And I was having this thought as I was in game 5, thinking like, man, Jokic is like throwing some crazy deep outlet passes away. Like he had a couple cross court turnovers that are just uncharacteristic. Like this isn't the best Jokic game. And then you look up, it's 25, 20, and 9, and he
And
dominates the last
it
few
felt like
minutes.
he just flipped a switch too
He
when it
did.
happened. Yeah.
And so like normally you would focus on the larger sample and like the Lakers led all this time and like this was much closer than it was. But for certain teams, and this is why I still think Denver should be the favorite, and that hasn't changed at all. I think for certain teams, you give them the benefit of the doubt with respect to switch flipping. It's like a rare category of team that I think you can view like their best 5 minutes as really indicative of who they are versus the other 43 or
Yes.
whatever the case is.
Kind of like peak
Denver's that.
Warriors. Do you remember when it felt like the Warriors, even kind of before Kevin Durant, but with Kevin Durant, it was they just need these like 2 to 5 minutes
Yeah,
of being at their zenith and it's over. And the
right.
Nuggets have that. I mean, this is coming off of I forced us to do I forced that discussion. It didn't happen organically. It was there's like this Spursian Warriors
Yeah.
inevitability vibe to the Nuggets. And I think that stands for me for sure after this
The,
series.
I didn't want to bring the Warriors up of my own accord for like the umpteenth time because I feel like I always relate everything back to them. I had the same thought, but the difference is some of those Warriors teams would have like a different lineup that unlocked like the oh shit we can't do the death lineup. Even the Harrison Barnes version of it was like
Oh yeah.
no one in the league had an answer for the death lineup, and then when it became Durant in Barnes's place, it was just like a joke. The Nuggets just have the same 5 guys and they just start to play better. Like that's almost scarier because it's not dependent on like some tweak that, if you not that you would ever do this, but it's like, oh, when they put Aaron Gordon at center or when they put Peyton Watson in for KCP or whatever, like that's when things really get unlocked. And it's like, no, it's the same guys. They just only take good shots when they want to, and they lock down defensively. So like that still feeds into the inevitability. So to answer my own question, I kind of leave this thinking like, man, the Lakers are pretty good. Like or at least LeBron and AD, like those guys, you couldn't ask like really much more from either of them. Now the rest of the roster I think was pretty disappointing, but that's what we expected. So I think you credit the Lakers. Don't kill the Nuggets for giving up a game in a 5-game
and there
series.
are things that should get, like the 3-point shooting, they were sub 32% for the series. And I'm still of the mind that they might be a team. It depends against Minnesota, so it might not be an issue. But like if you go up against Oklahoma City in the conference finals, the math battle with like if they hit enough threes, do we need Denver to take more threes? I think it's a fair question. I would still pick Denver to win the series, but like KCP will shoot better than 28% from three,
right?
And like that, and even just so you're mentioning their 5 guys, their top 5 guys, their starting 5 played 272 possessions in the Lakers series, the first round series. They were plus 11.2 points per 100 possessions with a really shitty defense during that time. I assume
Murray hobbled for a decent chunk.
Right. And so like the Lakers during that stretch, like that offensive rating is skewed by, they shot 72% at the rim, which I guess is sort of sustainable. But the Lakers actually, they shot only 26% from 3 during those minutes. So that's, everything was just, I guess, in transition and stuff, it looks like is kind of where the noise is. That's why you still have faith in the team. And then finally on the Nuggets, and I don't know if you have any thoughts to expound upon, but I just have, I guess it's 3 words, Michael Porter Jr. I mean, bring it back to your, like,
he had a xenomorph game.
Thing.
It was a xenomorph game.
And also, by the way, that's why you're able to overcome some of the collective 3-point shooting deficits. Murray being kind of all over the place for a good chunk of that series. It's because, okay, Michael Porter Jr. is out there. He's averaging 23 points a game, shooting 49% from 3 on over 8 attempts. Like him and KCP, I think were and Jamal Murray, of course. Like those are your 3-point high volume guys. And Michael Porter Jr. was the only one of those 3 guys shooting better than 30% from 3. And it's just, he is such, there are moments and times when he feels like a luxury, and where if you were going to fuck around with their lineups in crunch time, that's the guy that you would pull out. And that's
just like 2 years ago. I mean, last year people were talking about Bruce Brown's got to play over MPJ. This was last year.
What I'm talking about right now is even just it depends on the matchup, but it's just like, he's not a luxury. He's essential to, if you're only going to have these. And I know everyone's high on the youngsters. We like Christian Brown. We like Peyton Watson. I'm very intrigued by Julian Strawther. I'm actually probably more intrigued by Jalen Pickett of the 3 remaining guys between those 2 and Hunter Tyson. But like you need him to be like this, because that's not a cheat code. That's a lifeline when Jamal Murray isn't Jamal Murray, or when KCP isn't hitting his threes. So that's just like, that's where I say I'm like feeling a little bit more slightly uneasy about the Nuggets. It's solely because of, okay, well, how healthy will Jamal Murray be? But like, if you're going to get this version of Michael Porter Jr., 60% of Jamal Murray is good enough to win a title. Like,
right. Just, yeah. Well, just because like you can't, as an opposing team in a series, like MPJ cannot be you don't have the bandwidth to like we got to slow him down a top priority. Like you got way bigger fish to, like, you got to figure every asset you have has to be thrown at, like, how do we stop the Jokic Murray 2-man game? How do we, like, I don't know, you probably are more concerned with like, how do we make Aaron Gordon a liability somehow? Like you just don't have the ability to focus on stopping like the most dangerous shooter on the team, like, which is just like, it's so unfair. It's so, I mean, it's awesome. That's why, but it's not why the Nuggets are good. It's part of the reason, like, that just, you haven't if he's open, he's one of those guys like, oh, that's good. Like if he gets a clean look at it in rhythm, it's good. And it's just like, you're going to give up those looks to him because you don't have the ability to slow him down and also handle all the other stuff you do with Jokic. So yeah, I kind of started like trying to poke at the idea that like, oh, maybe we should be a little lower on Denver. Like, I don't really
think to dig deeper into that Minnesota series is going to be fascinating.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. We got to do a deep dive on that, because there are some different, I mean, it's just a really different team than the Lakers in a lot of important ways.
Look at that segue. Speaking of the Lakers.
Speaking of, what do we do besides we buried the fire the coach lead with the Suns? Like that seems like where we're headed here, right? Because there's less the problems the Lakers have with the roster are more easily solved than they are in Phoenix. I still think it's pretty clear that Darvin Ham is going to go. And then that's before even getting to like, what's LeBron going to do with the player option? Like, what do we do
So
with
they could
trades?
sign him, and there's the report from the Athletic that they will give him the 3-year, 164 million or whatever it is extension, which will, duh, if he wants it. Like,
Mm,
yes.
yeah.
They're also willing to draft Bronny if it makes him stay. That's kind of a duh moment. Nepo NBA players, that could be
Mm.
we can make that a thing. So, and I hope he's healthy. I know he dealt with a heart condition, and some people think he's a viable prospect, but I don't mean to drag just a young kid into this, but that's just, they're so desperate to keep LeBron because that's kind of odd that he's still so good, and he's definitely a revenue driver too. So even if he kind of sucked, that might be the case. But he's going to be 40, and like, yeah, we'll draft your son in the first round if we needed to. Like, so, but we need to see what the Pelicans do with their pick. That's something we're waiting on. I believe they didn't choose to defer yet. I don't believe. I think they will, but they can. So we have the LeBron thing, the Darvin Ham thing, which is, are they going to wait and see kind of what happens with Tyrone? Like, who's the coach that you want to install here? Maybe it's easy. Like, Lakers fans hate Darvin Ham. They think that he plays too small, seems to be their biggest gripe.
Hated the rotations all year. Just hated
and I get it. Like, it took too long with some like the cutesiness of having Austin Reeves come off the bench at one point, but it sounds like he wasn't necessarily working with a lot.
Well, that's what he said too. And it sounds like excuse making, but like, he's right. Like guys were hurt, guys underperformed. What do you want?
He almost mythologized how unhealthy they were, though. Like, they were the only team working through injuries, is what I think the big quibble was. So you have the Darvin Ham thing. I expect LeBron to be back. I know there's Carrie Champion and said that she heard game 5 was going to be his last game as a Laker. And I saw all the funny responses were like, so if they win, he's just not going to play in game 6. But I think he'll be back. I don't think Darvin Ham will be back. And so now it gets into the thing of, one, everyone said D'Angelo Russell's going to decline his player option, that makes it harder then to construct trades because all of a sudden you don't have his money. Do you expect him to decline his player option? And if he does, do you think that he like leaves? Is he coming back? Like, that's sort of one layer here. And then it comes to, this is the bigger one. Okay, well, what is the trade? They have 3 first-round picks. Well, they will have 3 movable first-round picks at some point. They have some salary matching. They can include swaps. Who is the guy for them? I saw a lot of people like, well, why would they think that Trae Young would fix this team? And it's, well, Trae Young's not going to fix their team, but he would like give them an identity that is actually measurably above like other teams, where it's okay, their offense was really good after the All-Star break, but their defense suffered, and it's still not an offense you trust over all these other elite teams. And so if you had Trae Young, I mean, I would advocate for it if he's getting gettable, but I would almost argue, I'm saying Trae Young comes in and you're going to have an elite offense and you can hang your hat on, okay, we're 5th in offense and we're going to be 5th in offense, whatever. I actually think the route to go, and because of how we've seen this postseason unfold, is, well, like, wouldn't like DeJounte Murray and Bogdanovich and Okongwu, like some combination of those, I'm not saying that's the only team you work with, but it's, let's try and flesh this out with like 2 or 3 players who crack the top 6, top 7 of our rotation, rather than trying to consolidate again, even though we're worried about the fallout from LeBron James eventually leaving or retiring.
Yeah, I think like the Trae Young type move is just, it almost feels like you're saying these top 2 guys and Davis and LeBron aren't good enough to be the top 2 guys on a title team. And like, the longer we go, the more likely that'll be true. But I don't know what anyone saw just even in this series against Denver that would suggest like, well, the problem is Davis and LeBron just aren't good enough. Like that's not it. It's just the lack of depth behind them, the lack of guys that give you something on one end of the floor, but also don't take something off on the other end. Like so to get back to the Russell question, like I think he probably will opt out. And I don't think you can bring him back unless
Where's
it's
he
like,
going, though?
It's a separate issue.
It's like a lower, what if it's like 3 years, like 3 years and 50 million or something?
You can't, I think it would be underwhelming / a mistake to bring him back in the same role as your starting point guard and just expect like, no, this will be the year that he's not like at best a break even playoff guy. Like you just, I just don't, it's like change for change is just change's sake is stupid a lot of the time. But this feels like one of those situations where it's just Now, if you want to bring him back to preserve the asset, hashtag
Right.
preserve the asset, like sure. But I don't think you can go into next season as the Lakers thinking, well, we got Russell back, and so then we can proceed to what do we get for Austin Reeves and whatever else like that. That doesn't feel like you're improving enough, frankly. Like it just, I just don't think that's a viable
Who
solution to getting through another round in the playoffs or whatever the ceiling needs to be.
So I guess these are two separate questions. Who is the best player? Like, who's the worst player, I should say, that the Lakers could acquire while keeping their baseline Anthony Davis, LeBron, maybe Austin Reeves, unless you think the name is Devin Booker, where it's like, no, they need him to be a contender. What is the worst? Or is it, and then on the flip side of that, it's like, what, I'll go to that part afterwards. So let's say they're not necessarily dead set on the super consolidation route. Who, if they went out and got Alex Caruso back, which I'm not even trolling there, does it need to be better than an Alex Caruso? Or is it like, if it was an Alex Caruso and something, like if it was DeJounte Murray and Bogdan Bogdanovic or even Onyeka Okongwu, if those are the two guys coming in, do you think that gets them there?
I kind of love that trade. Like, I don't know how much
Which
thought you
one?
put into the Murray Bogdanovic Okongwu trade, just because we're getting three guys that are like two of which will start probably, and a third big that like I believe I could see him playing with either Davis or certainly with LeBron. I think it's that type of trade. I like getting, give me three guys that I can put out there. So I'm not having to decide during the year between Cam Reddish and Reeves.
That's going to take the full, if you're getting all three, I was thinking two, that costs you the full boat. That's your picks, that's your swaps, probably Austin Reeves, and then other salary.
I don't think the assets they have are enough to like split them up into separate trades and get enough difference making guys. Okay. I think you need to view it as like, this is our last one here. Like this, in terms of the LeBron James era, like this is our last, this is the last dry powder we have. We got to fire it and this has to count. And so it needs to be a pretty substantial trade. I love the idea of like a 3-for-2 or a 3-for-1. However, well, I mean, the salaries are going to have to match. So you got to figure out how to do that. But like getting three guys that are like, no questions asked, like you said, 3 of your top 6. Like, I think that has to be the move because
it's like a pretty big undertaking.
Well, nobody said it would be easy. Like you've been trying to win now with LeBron forever and you've made some major missteps along the way. So you're just like, yeah, degree of difficulty is high. That's just what it's going to be.
And they are a tax team. Like a lot. I mean, some of it depends on like what Russell's number would end up being at, but I think they have some wiggle room under the second apron. They might even be, yeah. So they were like $16 million below the second apron as of now. And I think that's with if D'Angelo Russell signs for basically what his player option is worth. So like there's stuff you can do in trades. There's that flexibility there. Now, I'm going to throw some names at you.
Okay.
It is the Lakers. And I do think it's fair to say, well, like LeBron is 40. Like we do want, if we're going to expend these assets, we want it to be on someone who could lead our team with Anthony Davis into the future. I'm just going to throw some names at you to where would you, if this is like not the one, but you're consolidating, this is the player you're bringing back. Would you make this trade for most or all of the assets that you have available if this player shakes loose? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Trae Young.
That's so hard. I think you probably have to. I'm so anti adding Trae Young to a system where I'm not sure he's going to be helpful. But yeah, I think you probably got it.
Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah. I'd rather have him than Trae Young. I think
I agree with that one. Mikal Bridges.
For everything?
You would take because I don't think that's the only way they would have even close to the best offer, right?
Yeah. That's borderline. I'd say probably yeah.
Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I think so.
I wouldn't do it. You're just like you're kind of sabotaging what your main goal was, which is to get this lifeline outside of LeBron, and like Kevin Durant and LeBron are going to age out at basically the same time.
Is your main goal a lifeline outside of LeBron, or is your main goal to give him the most immediate help?
You're right. But I'm just saying, like, that would be tougher for me to stomach than a Trae Young or Donovan Mitchell trade, I think. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. I guess, like, I don't know what I would want as a fan, necessarily. Do I want one more shot, or do I want, like, okay, when this is all bad, I still have, like, Davis and Trae Young or Donovan Mitchell? I'm not sure.
Larry Marketing.
I don't think so. I don't like the fit as much.
Deuce McBride.
100%. Would you do the
Jimmy
Markkinen
Butler.
one? Do you like Markkinen there?
I like him there, not for everything.
Yeah.
But like it's at that point, it's do they want Reeves? And it's gonna be Reeves and 2 first-round picks plus stuff at minimum. And
Yeah.
I mean him, Davis, and LeBron, and then like I think that's a good I like the fit, not for everything though. Jimmy Butler.
What a weird fit that would be with for your shoot. I guess LeBron's a great 3-point shooter now, so maybe that doesn't hurt as much. I think you give up everything for Butler.
I mean, I would assume yes, but like you're giving up most. So like even if
Yeah.
it's we didn't have to give up that swap, like
Yeah.
we're kind of operating on the margins there.
I don't know if I mean, we're not concerned about the other side, but I don't know if that's enough for the Heat. Although, yeah, I think you probably do that, but that's
I'm
like
gonna say if you
full
can get
on. This
Austin
is the
Reeves and 3 firsts and swaps for Jimmy Butler and on the Heat, I might
You
consider it.
might. I mean, but that is a last shot. Like even more so than Durant potentially because of the injury trajectory.
Oh yeah, Durant doesn't have any injury history.
Nope,
That's
he's been
right.
super healthy.
Now you just lost my train of thought on the next player I was gonna go to. Paul George.
I like that a lot. I think I would do that.
I think that's I mean, this is just Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think probably. Although, like, I don't know if that's a lifeline out when you're on the hook for that salary going forward.
Darius Garland, I guess, would be another name.
Yeah, could you get him without giving up all that stuff? You might be able to.
No,
You're buying low. I mean,
yeah, that's just that I'd be borderline with that. But like, yeah, those are just like some of the names that I could see the consolidation options that could have a pathway. I'm not even saying they'll be available, but that maybe could shake loose. But it's also just kind of like, could you go the route of like, well, what if we got, Anthony Simons and Jeremy Grant? Like, is that like, I think, I guess my overarching thought here is I'm considering the star trade if our assets are enough to get them. And you can poo-poo the Lakers assets if you want. If a player wants to go to the Lakers, that will factor in. I'm not saying they'll get him for a song, but their offer is real enough that if player preference, because they're coming up on free agency, factors into it, they have a real offer, is my point.
Yeah.
But I think I do think LeBron and AD were good, and Rui too. You see all those spins he had in like game 5? Like it just I think like the top end of your roster is good. The top 4, let's say Reeves, Rui, and I'm not saying Reeves and Rui are untouchable, but Davis, LeBron, if you could go get 2 guys, I think the Lakers are good enough to do 2 non-stars, 2, 3 non-stars maybe, whether they have to split them up or not in multiple transactions. I think, and that's not a terrible spot to be. I mean, we just talked about the Suns. That's the terrible spot to be.
Yeah, no, I mean, relative to that, there are so many avenues to go down for the Lakers. I'm really hung up on the idea of like, yeah, it's got to be you can't. There's not one guy that's realistically gettable that is going to make the Lakers like different enough or improved enough to really change things. You're so right. It's got to be a pseudo star or close to star plus like 2 more guys, or if that star is a little bigger, then maybe 1 more guy. So you need multiple. Like this team just didn't, after LeBron and AD, like nobody was consistently like really good. Like Reeves had moments, Hachimura had moments. There was never a 3rd, 4th, 5th guy that was like, he's got to be out there. He's got to. It was always trying to find him.
And it's very clearly they're not so good that it's, well, just look at how much time Vando and Gabe Vincent missed. We're gonna be fine. Like you don't get to play that hand.
They need to be viewed as like, well, if there are 8th, 9th guys, that's great, but they can't be 4, 5, 6 or whatever it is.
Stat padding time. Just guess a player right here. We have a couple to go back and forth on. Do you wanna kick us off, Grant?
Yes, please. I have one here from Mike. Let me make sure the player's at the bottom. Yes, he is. All right. Clue number 1, Dan. I was drafted in the late 1st round in 2004. Fun fact, I was sandwiched in between runs on European players, as shortly before I was picked, 3 straight Russian players were selected, and right after I was taken, 2 straight Slovenians were taken.
Michael Sweetney.
Great one-shot attempt. I respect it. Number 2. So all we know is 04 1st round. And sandwiched between European players. Number 2, I'm the most notable player from my alma mater in NBA history, having played 714 games, almost double that of the second place player from that school, Jarvis Hayes.
Jarvis
Okay.
Hayes. Oh my
So do you
God.
know where Jarvis Hayes went? I
That
don't.
did not help me at all. I feel like I should take like a step. How many games they play in? I'm going to pretend like that'll help.
714.
714. Oh, yeah, I can't even. Rashad McGinnis.
Is that a person? All right. 3, as a rookie, I played 45 games, mostly in garbage time, on a team about to transition into a lengthy rebuild. I only averaged 10 minutes per game, 2.9 points. Probably not going to help you.
No.
All right, we're getting a little more helpful here. Clue number 4. In my second season, I averaged 10 points a game, and started on occasion due to Bonzi Wells getting injured. During this season, we did make the playoffs, and I credited Doug Christie, hey, look, there's that name again, for teaching me how to defend in the NBA.
Oh, what team was Bonzi Wells and Doug Christie on together? Is that the Kings or the Blazers? Has to be one of those two teams. And if it's not, then this is really bad.
B.
Let me see. Doug Christie, Bonzi Wells.
So we're in 0506 right now, if that helps, because he was an 04 draftee.
Oh, 6. No, I do not think that helps me. Carry on.
Okay, clue 5. The following season was my team's descent into a long-standing rebuild, but I finished second in most improved player voting behind only Monte Ellis. I averaged 20.2 points on 47% shooting and shot 38% from deep.
This isn't Brandon Waugh, is it?
Brandon Roy?
Roy?
Going with the French, the Patrick Waugh pronunciation? No, it is not Brandon Roy. That's a good guess, though, because you get the Bonzi Wells thing. Don't forget Doug Christie's name was in clue 4. Let's see. You ready for clue 6?
Yeah.
The next season, I upped my scoring to 23 points a game, and the season after that, I averaged 24.6. However, we won 38 games and 17 games in those seasons, respectively. So this guy's scoring now, especially for that era.
Yeah. And I'm stuck on the credited Doug Christie for teaching me how to defend in the NBA.
Oh, yeah, I won't say anything else. I don't want to give you.
And this person's not a European player, correct? That's what we established.
That's not explicitly stated, but I will just tell you that is in fact the case. He is not a European player.
Okay, keep going.
All right. 7. The following season, I was traded at the deadline in a 3-team move that saw me go to Houston, along with Jordan Hill, Hilton Armstrong, and Jared Jeffries. The team that drafted me got Carl Landry and Larry Hughes. The Knicks got Tracy McGrady in this move.
Oh God, I feel like I should definitely know this one now. What was the trade again?
So he goes to Houston with Jordan Hill, Hilton Armstrong, and Jared Jeffries. The team that drafted him got Landry and Larry Hughes, and the Knicks got McGrady.
Oh man, I should know this. No, keep going.
All right, clue 8. In my first 2 seasons with Houston, I averaged around 22 per game, but my 3-point percentages started to dip.
Who am I missing? I'm missing someone like super obvious here at this point.
I mean,
he's had what, 6 20-point seasons so far? I feel like I should know that.
Yeah. I will say to me, what would be the biggest giveaway clue has not been mentioned yet. That this particular aspect of this player has not been mentioned yet.
All right, keep going then.
All right. Clue 9. The following season, I played in 40 games and had my worst season as a starter, averaging only 17 points per game.
Doesn't help me at all. Keep going.
Okay, clue 10. The following offseason, the Thunder came calling as they had a James Harden-sized payroll conundrum. So I was acquired along with Cole Aldrich and the star of the trade, Jeremy
Kevin
Lin.
Martin. Fuck me. I knew I should have known that.
I want to see. Correct, Kevin Martin. 11 is I played a season in OKC before hitting the market, getting a 4 for 28 from Minnesota. Played well in Minnesota. Was bought out in year 3. 12, I'm currently part of the ownership group of the NBL's Brisbane Bullets. No mention of the funkiest jump shot form on planet Earth for a good scorer. That's what would have given it away for me. I don't know how you give that clue though, other than to say my form was weird. Yep, you got it, Kevin Martin.
Oh, that was a good one. I wish I would have known it earlier though. I have this one for you from Rubik's Gal.
Okay.
Can you? Oh, so Nikola Jokic had yet another 25, 20, and 10 playoff game. He now has 4 such games. No one else has even had one since the NBA ABA merger. Can you name some of the folks who came close? And there are clues. There are 4 players who came relatively close. There are clues for each of them. Would you like to take a stab, though, at any of the players who came close to having a 25 point, 20 rebound, 10 assist playoff game?
Sure. I mean, I could just start throwing names out, but I feel like, Olajuwon, that would be one of my guesses.
Nope.
Tim Duncan.
Nope.
Shaq.
Nope.
Okay, well then I guess I'm gonna need the clues.
Okay. First player, this point guard had a penchant for turning up his scoring output in playoff games, so much so that playoff, insert last name here, is one of his official Basketball Reference nicknames. In a low-scoring conference semifinal in 2010, he outscored, out-rebounded, and out-assisted, having 29, 28, and 13 everybody else on either team, including a certain future multiple-time finals MVP.
Feels like Rondo.
Correct.
Okay.
Player 2, the aforementioned future multiple-time finals MVP did it 4 times, came close 4 times, including a 27, 19, and 10 game in the same 2010 conference semis 4 days after Rondo, though he almost made it an unfortunate quadruple double with 9 turnovers to go along with those assists. He's also one of only 2 to do it in the finals since the turn of the century.
Is that LeBron?
Correct.
Okay.
2 for 2. Not bad. Player 3, this slender harvester who recorded a 49, 17, 10 triple double against the eventual champs, played all 48 minutes and shot nearly 70, 45, 80 in a game he single-handedly dragged his team to win, while the remaining members of the big 3 looked on, one of them doing the looking on from the court itself, notching up a trademark triple single of his own, going 1 of 10 from the field.
Kevin Durant?
Correct. Surprised you got that. That was a mouthful, that clue.
Slender harvester was a giveaway there.
All right, 4th and final player. This Hall of Fame, this Hall of Fame, this half of a Twin Tower lineup took only 37 minutes of playing time to rack up 33, 17, and 10 back in 1986 against Alex English's Nuggets, and he added 5 blocks to go with the rest of that party. But he didn't quite tower over the counting stats. His partner Tower outscoring him 36 and out rebounding him with 19. Have I said Tower enough?
Hey, well, I already guessed Olajuwon and that was incorrect, so it has to be Ralph Sampson.
Ding, ding, ding. That's pretty good. You got all 4 with on those clues.
I just need the clues. I just 0 for 3.
I thought you would have just thrown LeBron out there though in your initial like.
I was thinking big guys. Just the 20 rebounds was
LeBron
hard for me.
Is 6'9".
That's true. You should just always go like LeBron, Jordan, there's
Fat Lever
always.
I hope the people who only follow us for our shorts like catch on to the Fat Lever bit or enjoy it, because he just keeps
people to just constantly be wondering why we're talking about Fat Lever, like they're missing something.
They probably don't care, because I feel like the shorts audience, and if you're in the if you're listening, hit us up in the comments and let me know. But it feels like they're not necessarily, I don't want to use the word loyal, but they don't care about the inside jokes or like the actual podcast. So they're probably like, but I'd be curious to know.
All right. I have another guess a player for you. This is also from Mike. We were in 2004 draftees last time. This is a 2007. In 07, clue number 1, I was drafted by the Bobcats. Quick. 07 draftees by the Bobcats. Just start listing all of the ones that you know.
Mecca Okafor.
Number 2. Good guess. Clue number 2. I was a regular contributor as a rookie, outshining my fellow rookie teammate who was taken before me in the same draft.
Is that one of Mecca Okafor?
I don't know. I don't think so. That feels too early.
You think Mecca? That's too early for Okafor?
Oh, no, that's not too early, because he was in the Howard draft, right? Which is like, it's not a Mecca Okafor. But
so that's too late. So I'm sorry, what was that? So he was drafted in 2008 by the Bobcats?
So this is an 07 draftee by the Bobcats. It was a regular contributor as a rookie, and he outshined his fellow rookie teammate who was taken before him. in the
Is this
draft.
too late for Gerald Henderson? When did he come to the league?
When did he get drafted? It's not Gerald Henderson.
All right, keep going then.
All right. Clue 3. My second year, I got off to a terrible start, averaging what would be a career low in points. And after only 20 games, I was shipped off to the Suns along with Jason Richardson for Boris Diaw and Raja Bell.
Ooh. Shipped out with Boris Diaw and Raja Bell. He's a sophomore at this point. Or is he a...
Let's see. No, he was traded with Jason Richardson for Diaw and Bell.
Oh, and he's a sophomore at this point.
Yes.
I feel like I want to throw a guess out there, but because I feel like I should know a player. Who was PJ Tucker drafted by? When did he end up on the Suns?
Nobody.
Oh, he was in the second row. This didn't say he wasn't a second round pick. Or was he undrafted? My brain's off that. Keep going.
I can't remember. All right. Clue number 4. During my time in Phoenix, I gained immediate attention for posting journalist-style videos of interviews with my son's teammates on Twitter under a pseudonym.
I have no idea. Did you know this about this player?
No, I don't remember that. I wouldn't have it yet either, I don't think, if I were you. You want to take a shot?
Please continue. No.
All right, clue 5. I spent 5 years in Phoenix as a glue guy and role player before joining the Clippers in 2013 as part of the Eric Bledsoe trade.
I mean, I should know this at this point, I feel like. No, I still got nothing. The glue guy in the Eric Bledsoe trade ended up on the Clippers. I'm gonna kick myself. I have no idea who it is.
Yeah, I still don't. I'm not surprised you don't have it here yet. Clue 6. After one season in LA, I was traded to the Bucks for Carlos Delfino. After that season, I accepted my player option to stay for the following year.
This makes me feel like I shouldn't know it. See, he had to be traded for Carlos Delfino. It clearly wasn't very good.
Carlos Delfino was one of my favorite dunks. Just this, didn't he have like an out of nowhere baseline dunk on somebody? Maybe reverse. I'll have to look that up later.
All right, keep hitting me.
Clue 7. 10 days later, I was traded to Washington for a heavily protected second-round pick and missed the first few months of the season after getting surgery done to fix a herniated disc. So now we're in Washington.
My God.
Charlotte.
This person played for a sorry bunch of teams.
Yeah.
The Suns, he was there. That's fine. But
yeah,
that era of the Clippers, the Bobcats, obviously, the Wizards, jeez. Yeah, nothing.
Okay, clue 8. I then returned to Phoenix for 3 more years before getting traded once again, this time to the Nets for Darrell Arthur. I have no recollection of that trade.
No.
Okay. Clue 9. My most notable achievement as a Net was feuding with a pre-collapse Ben Simmons in the playoffs. So this is Sixers Ben Simmons still.
This guy was on. It's not. No.
This guy's on the
Scola. That can't be it.
No, it's not Luis Scola. This guy's on the Nets feuding with Ben Simmons when Ben Simmons was still a thing.
I want to know that. Oh no. I know who it is. And it's Jared Dudley.
You're correct. I thought it was going to take you it would have taken me till like the last clue, I think. Good job. Clue 10 was after that season, I played 2 seasons with the Lakers, winning a title in the bubble. Forgot all about that. Clue 11, after I retired, I joined Jason Kidd's coaching staff immediately, where I still am today. I think it would have taken me till then to get it. That's a deep man. Jared Dudley, the journeyman, where there's like no one team you really associate him with. Those are the hardest ones.
Whoa. Okay. I have a guess a player for you that has nothing to do with Darvin Ham. This quote's coming out now. Said, if you're coaching a team and one of your starters is like 10 games in a row just shitting the bed, what are you going to do?
I saw that earlier today. So that's Austin Reeves? Is that what we're saying? Is that who we're talking about?
Like, isn't that D'Lo?
I mean, I guess.
But it can't be LeBron or AD, right?
No, can't be. But like when I read that, I was thinking that's him justifying playing Cam Reddish over Reeves for like that, whenever that was, like November, I think, maybe. I don't know.
All right.
Not a good look either way.
He knows he's done, right? That's like, you can't say, I didn't see this quote. You can't say that it has to be Austin Reeves or D'Lo, I guess, would be, because why would he talk about Rui like that? That's just weird.
He's got to know. I mean, you don't say that.
We now enter the segment of who is Bill Walton talking about?
All right. I'm going to give you one here.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm trying to decide which my favorite one is. His left leg belongs in the Smithsonian. Just his left leg. Is Bill Walton referring to Tim Duncan, Tony Kukoc, Trevor Booker? The names, Dan. The names that he puts here are so good. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Tony Delk?
Tony Delk.
It is Kareem. That one actually makes sense. Shoot the sky hook off the left leg. The rare Bill Walton one where you could actually... That's the problem, is it gets you out of the mindset of trying to choose the correct answer.
All right, let's alternate.
Okay.
Grant, who is Bill Walton talking about? If blank continues playing at this level, he's going to replace Jerry West on the NBA logo. Kobe Bryant, Daniel Gibson, Kendall Gill, Eric Piatowski, Ricky Davis.
I already decided that it was Daniel Gibson before hearing the other names.
It is not. It's Eric Piatowski. I might be mispronouncing that, but that's an incredible.
All right. Blank. Pick one pivot foot, please. Is he talking about Dale Davis, Festus Ezeli, Brian Skinner, Chris Wilcox, or Kendrick Perkins?
What was the quote?
Pick one pivot foot, please.
Chris Wilcox.
It is Dale Davis. Trace Jackson Davis's dad. God, okay. I'm not going to spoil the rest of these. Go ahead.
Blank is one of the true marvels, not just of basketball or in America, but in the history of Western civilization. Manute Bol, Sean Bradley, Earl Boykins, John Stockton, or Jason Richardson?
Sean Bradley.
Incorrect. It's John Stockton. That's disappointing.
Okay, I have to read this one.
Untrue.
I have to read this one to you then. I know we didn't agree to this many. Blank has completely changed the fate of Western civilization here. Bill Walton likes to talk about Western civilization. Arvydas Sabonis, Sean Bradley, Trenton Hassel, Vincent Yarborough. That's the deepest pull of all time so far. Drew Gooden.
I'm going to say Vincent Yarborough because if Mike knew who that was, kudos to him.
It's Sean Bradley, which is why I answered Sean Bradley to your Western civilization one.
All right, I'll give you one more then.
Right.
Bill Walton, in response to if he knows this player. Yeah, he's a 6'8" forward from the University of Arizona.
Okay.
Andre Iguodala, Derek Williams, Richard Jefferson, Chase Budinger, or Luke Walton?
It's got to be Luke Walton.
It is. I thought that was going to be a dead giveaway. That was good.
I felt really good going into that because I was like, oh, he just has to be a 6'8" forward from Arizona. And then Mike found all 6'8" forwards from Arizona. Good job, Mike.
We need to do one stat padding where it's just who's Bill Walton talking about. Go for like 10 minutes on that.
I feel like the people want it, but Lord knows.
Or that, or just you and I want it.
Well, yeah, somebody wants it, I guess. I don't know. Multiple choice. Who wants Bill Walton? Sean Bradley, Trevor Booker.
Comment below if you want to hear and you're listening this long. Comment on YouTube or in our Discord. You can join our Discord and let us know if you want more. Who was Bill Walton talking about?
Let us
Mike,
know.
You can refrain from answering.
How much Bill Walton is too much? Is there a threshold?
Would you like to take us out of here?
I would love to. Everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for contributing both in the Bill Walton and guest of player realms. You people know who you are. We always appreciate it. As always, remember, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your enemies, help us grow this podcast. Thumbs up on YouTube. Where else? If you're not subscribed on whatever you're listening to this on your podcast provider, just please do that. And if you're interested in getting more involved, join our Discord, get some merch. Links for that are in the YouTube and podcast description. That is going to do it for us today. We'll be back later in the week with some more playoff stuff. I'm not sure when we're going to run that. But it's going to be timely because everything changes after every single game. Closing, as always, shouts, Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.